Chioma stepped out of the black Mercedes-Benz with grace, her emerald gown sweeping across the polished marble floor of the Lekki luxury hotel. The fabric caught the golden light of the grand chandelier above, making her look like she was glowing. She had spent hours preparing for this evening. Her hair was styled in beautiful waves that framed her face perfectly. Her makeup was done by a professional who understood her skin tone and brought out her natural beauty. The emerald gown was not just expensive, it was elegant, tasteful, and it made her feel confident and proud of herself. As she walked through the ballroom, Chioma could see the wealth and power of Lagos all around her. Men in expensive suits stood in small groups, talking about business deals and politics. Women in designer dresses laughed and clinked glasses filled with champagne. The air smelled like expensive perfume and success. Chioma had been to many events like this, but tonight felt different. Tonight she was here to support her husband, Colonel, at an important company gala. He had been talking about this event for weeks. He said it was a chance to make a good impression on the company's big bosses. He said if he could network well tonight he might get promoted soon. Colonel worked as a middle manager at an oil company, a position he had achieved through hard work, but also through the sacrifices Chioma had made. She had supported him through his MBA studies while working full-time as a business consultant. She had been the one earning good money while he was still studying at night. She had believed in him when he did not believe in himself. She had given up opportunities to move abroad for better jobs because he wanted to stay in Lagos to build his career. Everything Chioma had done for the past 5 years had been with one goal in mind, to help Colonel succeed. Now as she looked around the ballroom she felt proud. She had done what she set out to do. Her husband was moving up in the world and soon their life together would be even better. She smiled to herself as she spotted Colonel across the room. He was standing with his boss, Mr. Adeyemi, a tall man with broad shoulders and gray hair that made him look important and powerful. They were laughing about something, their heads close together like they were sharing a secret. Chioma felt warm seeing her husband looking so happy and comfortable with his boss. This was good. This was what she wanted for him. Chioma walked toward them, her heart light, ready to join in the conversation and be the supportive wife. She wanted Mr. Adeyemi to see that Colonel had a beautiful, intelligent wife who supported him. She wanted to show that Colonel was a good man with a good family behind him. But as she got closer, she began to hear their words. The closer she got, the clearer the voices became. And then she heard something that made her stop moving completely. "My wife thinks she is some big consultant," Colonel said, and his voice was cruel in a way Chioma had never heard before. "But look at her. She comes from nothing really. Nothing at all. Her family was selling vegetables in the market when I met her. Can you imagine? Her mother spent years selling tomatoes and onions on the street." Chioma felt the air leave her lungs. She stood frozen, unable to move, unable to speak. Her husband was talking about her mother, who had worked so hard to give her an education. Her mother, who had sold vegetables in the market so that Chioma could go to good schools. Her mother, who had dreamed that her daughter would have a better life than she had. And Colonel was using this, her mother's hard work, her family's humble beginning, as a joke to make his boss laugh. Mr. Adeyemi's laugh was loud and mean. It was the kind of laugh that made other people join in without even knowing why they were laughing. "A market girl?" he said, shaking his head. "And she is trying to dress like she is somebody important? Your wife should know her place, my brother. She should know that she is not like us." The circle of men around them erupted in laughter. Chioma could see other guests turning to look at her. Some had smirks on their faces. Some looked at her with pity as if they felt sorry for her. Others whispered to their friends while pointing in her direction. She could feel every eye in that ballroom landing on her like tiny arrows. The emerald gown that had made her feel so confident just moments ago now felt like it was too much, too bold, too ambitious for someone like her, someone from a market family. Colonel laughed too. He laughed the loudest of everyone. He threw his head back and laughed like he was enjoying the funniest joke he had ever heard. His own voice was the one that cut the deepest. His own laughter felt like a knife going through her heart. This was the man she loved. This was the man she had believed in. This was the man she had sacrificed for, supported, and stood by. And he was laughing at her. He was making jokes about her family, about her background, about where she came from. Chioma's hands began to shake. She could feel tears forming in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Not here. Not in front of all these people. She turned around slowly and walked away from the group, her head held high even though her heart was breaking into 1,000 pieces. No one tried to stop her. No one called out her name. Her own husband did not even notice that she had walked away. She made her way through the ballroom, past the laughing guests, past the waiters carrying glasses of champagne, past the couples dancing slowly on the dance floor. She walked until she found the ladies' restroom, a quiet place where she could be alone. She locked herself in one of the stalls and sat down on the closed toilet seat. Her body shook as she tried not to cry. Her hands covered her face as the tears finally came, rolling down her cheeks and washing away the carefully applied makeup. Chioma sat there in that bathroom stall for a long time, alone with her pain and her confusion. She thought about her mother who had worked so hard in that market. She thought about all the difficult days, all the times her mother had come home tired and dirty, but smiling because her daughter was getting a good education. She thought about how proud her mother had been when Chioma graduated from university. She thought about how Kunal had always acted like he was proud to be married to her, at least when they were alone together. But tonight, in front of his boss and his colleagues, he had shown his true face. Tonight, she had learned something about the man she had married that she could never forget. Her background was not something to be ashamed of. Her family's hard work was not something to mock. And she was not someone who deserved to be treated this way by anyone, especially not by the man who promised to love and respect her forever. The drive home from the gala was silent and heavy. Kunal sat in the driver's seat, talking casually about the evening as if nothing had happened. He spoke about the food, about the important people he had met, about how impressed Mr. Adeyemi seemed with him. He even laughed a few times trying to draw Chioma into the conversation, but she said nothing. She stared out the window at the Lagos night, watching the lights of the city blur past as they drove through the streets. Her jaw was clenched so tightly that her teeth hurt. Her heart felt like it had turned to stone inside her chest. Kunal eventually gave up trying to talk to her. He turned up the radio, filling the uncomfortable silence with music and news broadcasts. Chioma was grateful for this. She did not want to hear his voice. She did not want to hear him explaining away what he had done or pretending that it had all been just a joke. She wanted to be alone with her pain, alone with the betrayal that kept replaying in her mind like a broken record. When they arrived home, Kunal went straight to bed, exhausted from the evening. Chioma went to the guest bedroom instead, locking the door behind her. She sat on the edge of the bed in the dark, still wearing the emerald gown. She could not bring herself to take it off. The dress now felt like a symbol of her foolishness, her naivety, her willingness to believe that Kunal loved and respected her. She lay down on the bed fully clothed and stared at the ceiling. Hours passed. The night seemed to stretch on forever. Sleep would not come. Every time she closed her eyes, she heard the sound of Kunal's laughter, his cruel words about her mother, the way Mr. Adeyemi had mocked her. She heard the other men laughing along, and she felt that shame all over again, fresh and sharp as a knife. Around 2 in the morning, just when Chioma thought she might finally fall asleep from sheer exhaustion, her phone buzzed on the bedside table. A WhatsApp message had come through. She picked up her phone and looked at the screen. The message was from someone named Busola. Chioma frowned. She did not know anyone named Busola. At least not anymore. Not in many years. But as she read the message, her confusion turned to shock. The message said, "Chioma, I need to talk to you urgently." Not a text conversation. "This is important. I am calling you in 5 minutes. Please answer. It is me, Busola. Your cousin from Ibadan." Busola. Chioma's mind raced back through the years. Busola was her cousin, her mother's sister's daughter. They had grown up together in Ibadan, playing in the same streets, studying in the same schools. They had been close as children, like sisters. But after secondary school, their paths had diverged. Busola had gone to study in America on a scholarship. She had gotten a job there and built a life in another country. Over the years they had lost touch. Chioma had heard from other family members that Busola was doing well, that she had a good job, that she was living in America. But Chioma had no idea what she was doing now or why she would be sending her a message at 2 in the morning. Before Chioma could even finish reading the message, her phone began to ring. It was a video call from Busola. Chioma's hands trembled slightly as she accepted the call. The screen lit up, and suddenly Chioma was looking at the face of her cousin, a face she had not seen in person for nearly 10 years. Busola looked different. She was older, of course, but it was more than that. She looked powerful. She looked important. Her hair was styled in a sleek, professional way. She was sitting in what appeared to be a large office with floor-to-ceiling windows behind her. Through the windows, Chioma could see a skyline that looked like New York City or perhaps Dubai. The office itself was decorated with modern furniture and expensive-looking art. Everything about Busola screamed success and power. "Chioma," Busola said, her voice warm but serious. "I'm so glad you answered. I know it is late, but I had to call you." "Busola?" Chioma's voice was confused and uncertain. "Is that really you? What is going on?" Why are you calling me at this time of night? Because I witnessed something tonight that made my blood boil, Basola said, and her expression was intense with anger. I was at the Gala, Chioma. The one at the Lekki Hotel. I was there for business meetings, and I decided to attend the company event because it was one of the companies under my organization. I saw you there. I saw your beautiful emerald gown. And I saw what happened. Chioma felt her chest tighten. What do you mean you saw what happened? I was standing near you when Colonel and Mr. Adeyemi made those comments, Basola continued, her voice firm and protective. I heard every single word. I heard them mocking you. I heard them laughing about your family. I heard your husband, my cousin's husband, humiliate you in front of dozens of people. And I watched you walk away with dignity even though they were breaking your heart. Tears filled Chioma's eyes again. You were there? I was there, Basola confirmed. And I need to tell you something important. Something that might change everything. Chioma, I am the chief executive officer of the parent company that owns the corporation where Colonel works. That gala tonight was partly organized by my company. Mr. Adeyemi works under me even if he does not know it yet. And the toxic behavior I witnessed tonight, the kind of behavior that allows men to mock and disrespect women in the workplace, that is not going to happen in my company. Chioma's mouth fell open. She could not speak. Her cousin, the girl she used to play with in the streets of Ibadan, was now a CEO of a major corporation. And she had witnessed the moment when Chioma's own husband had humiliated her. I do not know what your marriage is like and I do not know if you want to stay with Colonel or leave him, Basola continued. That is your decision to make. But what I do know is that this kind of behavior, this toxic masculinity that allows men to tear down women to impress their bosses, this ends in my company. Do you understand me? Basola, Chioma tried to speak but her cousin held up her hand. Let me finish, Basola said. I want you to know that you are not alone in this. I am here for you. I am your family and family stands together. Tomorrow morning I want you to meet me. We are going to talk about what happened and we are going to figure out what comes next. But I want you to know something tonight, Chioma. I want you to know that what your husband and his boss did was wrong. You did not deserve it. Your family did not deserve to be mocked. And the world needs to know that there are consequences for treating people like that. After they hung up, Chioma sat in the darkness of the guest bedroom, her phone still glowing in her hands. For the first time since the gala she felt something other than shame and pain. She felt hope. She felt like someone was standing beside her, someone with power and influence who cared about her and was willing to fight for her. She did not know what the future would hold, but she knew that she was no longer alone in her suffering. Her cousin had seen her pain, and her cousin was going to do something about it. The morning sun was bright and warm as Chioma arrived at the small cafe in Victoria Island. It was a quiet place, the kind of place where wealthy business people came to have private conversations. The cafe had high walls and private booths, which meant that no one would overhear them talking. Chioma had never been to this cafe before, but Basola had texted her the address early that morning along with a time to meet. Chioma was nervous as she walked through the cafe doors. She had barely slept after the video call with her cousin. She had spent most of the night thinking about everything that had happened, about her marriage, about her future. She had even considered not showing up to meet Basola, but something inside her, something strong and brave that she did not know she possessed, told her that she needed to do this. She needed to talk to someone who understood, someone who cared about her, someone who had power and could actually help. When she spotted Basola in one of the private booths at the back of the cafe, Chioma felt a wave of emotion wash over her. Her cousin stood up to greet her and they embraced. Basola held Chioma for a long moment, and Chioma could feel the strength in her cousin's arms. This was not just a greeting. This was a message. It was Basola saying, I am here for you. I will protect you. They sat down across from each other in the booth. A waiter brought them coffee and pastries but neither of them touched the food. Basola looked at Chioma with intense dark eyes that seemed to see everything, understand everything. She was dressed in a sharp gray business suit with a white blouse underneath. Her hair was perfect, her makeup was flawless, and she carried herself with the confidence of someone who had worked hard to reach the top and was not going to let anyone push her down. Tell me everything, Basola said simply. I want to know about your marriage, about Kunal, about your life together. I want to understand what has been happening. Chioma took a deep breath and then she began to talk. The words came pouring out of her like water from a broken dam. She told Basola about meeting Kunal 5 years ago at university. She described how charming he had been, how he had made her laugh, how she had believed that he loved her and respected her. She talked about how she had supported him through his MBA while working full-time as a business consultant. She explained how she had turned down job offers in London and Dubai because Kunal wanted to stay in Lagos. She had given up opportunities for her own career to help build his. Chioma talked about the small humiliations that had been happening for years. She told Basola about how Kunal would make comments about her clothes, saying they were too expensive or too bold for someone from her background. She described how he would interrupt her when she was talking about her work, or how he would roll his eyes when she spoke about her professional achievements. She explained that at parties and family gatherings he would often make jokes about her humble family background, always laughing as if it was all meant to be funny, but the jokes always seemed to have a cruel edge to them. "I thought he was just joking," Chioma said, her voice breaking with emotion. "I thought it was his way of being playful. But looking back now, I can see that he was always trying to make me feel small. He was always trying to remind me that he thought I was beneath him, that my family was not good enough, that I was lucky to have him." Basola listened without interrupting, her expression growing darker with each word. She sipped her coffee and nodded, encouraging Chioma to continue. When Chioma finally finished talking, she was exhausted. She had poured out years of pain and humiliation, and now she felt empty but also lighter, as if she had put down a heavy burden that she had been carrying for too long. "Chioma," Basola said slowly, her voice firm and protective. "What you are describing is not love. What you are describing is abuse. It is emotional abuse. He has been systematically breaking down your confidence, making you doubt your own worth, making you believe that you are lucky to be with him. This is a classic pattern of an abusive partner." Chioma had never thought of it that way before. She had thought that she was just being sensitive, that she was overreacting to Kunal's jokes. But now, hearing Basola say it out loud, she realized that her cousin was right. It was abuse. It was real and it was serious and it was wrong. "I also want to tell you something about Mr. Adeyemi," Basola continued. "When I conducted an investigation after the gala, I discovered that his behavior is not an isolated incident. He has a long history of creating a hostile work environment. There are complaints from female employees about inappropriate comments, about discrimination, about unwanted advances. He has been protected by the system and by men like your husband who benefit from his behavior." Chioma felt anger rising inside her. Not just anger at Kunal, but anger at the entire system that allowed men like Mr. Adeyemi to behave this way, that allowed them to demean and disrespect women without any consequences. "I am going to handle this," Basola said. "I am going to fire Mr. Adeyemi, and I am going to make sure that Kunal faces consequences for his behavior as well. But before I do that, I want to offer you something, Chioma. I want to offer you a choice." Chioma leaned forward, listening intently. "I have recently created a new position in my company," Basola explained. "A position for a head of corporate culture and inclusion. This role would involve developing new policies and programs to create a workplace where everyone is respected and valued, regardless of their background or gender. I believe you are the perfect person for this job. You have the business experience, the education, the intelligence, and most importantly, you have the understanding of what it means to be disrespected and marginalized in the workplace." Chioma's eyes widened. "You want me to work for you? I want you to join my team," Basola said. "I want you to help me build a company where people like my cousin are never treated the way you were treated. I want you to use your pain and your experience to create change. But more than that, I want you to have your own power, your own income, your own independence. I want you to have options." "Options," Chioma repeated. "Yes," Basola said. "Right now, you might feel trapped by your marriage because you are dependent on Kunal for money and stability. But if you have your own successful career, your own good income, your own professional identity, then you have the freedom to choose. You can choose to stay in your marriage if you want to, or you can choose to leave. But the choice will be yours, not something dictated by your financial situation." Chioma felt tears filling her eyes, but these were different tears. These were not tears of pain and humiliation. These were tears of hope and possibility. "I do not want revenge, Basola," Chioma said quietly. "I do not want to hurt Kunal or Mr. Adeyemi just to make myself feel better. But I do want justice. I want change. I want to make sure that other women do not have to experience what I experienced. That is exactly why I want you for this job," Basola said, reaching across the table and taking Chioma's hand. "You have integrity. Even broken-hearted, even humiliated, you still care about what is right and fair. That is the kind of person we need leading this initiative." Chioma took a deep breath and looked into her cousin's eyes. She saw strength there and she saw love. She saw someone who believed in her, someone who had power and was willing to use it to help her. Yes, Chioma said firmly. Yes, I will accept the position. Not for revenge but for change. For justice. For myself and for every other woman who deserves better. Busola smiled, and for the first time since the gala, Chioma felt like she was standing on solid ground again. She felt like her life was about to change, and this time she was ready for it. The news came down like thunder through the offices of the company. On a Tuesday morning, exactly 4 days after Chioma's conversation with Busola at the cafe, Mr. Adeyemi received a summons to the head office. He was a man who was used to power, used to being feared and respected by those below him. He walked into that office with his head held high, expecting perhaps a promotion or some kind of praise for his work. What he did not expect was to be told that his employment was being terminated immediately. The official letter stated that he was being fired for creation of a hostile work environment, discrimination and mismanagement resulting in significant staff turnover. But there was more to it than that. Busola had conducted a thorough investigation into Mr. Adeyemi's conduct over the past 5 years. She had interviewed dozens of employees, women and men alike. She had reviewed emails, documented incidents, and collected evidence of a pattern of inappropriate behavior that went far beyond the incidents at the gala. There were complaints from female employees about unwanted comments about their appearance. There were reports of Mr. Adeyemi making decisions about promotions and raises based on personal favor rather than merit. There was even a woman who had filed a complaint about inappropriate touching at a company event 2 years ago, but the complaint had been buried in the system and never properly investigated. When Busola reviewed all of this evidence, she realized that Mr. Adeyemi represented everything that was wrong with the company's culture. He was not just a bad manager. He was toxic. And as the new CEO, she had the power and the responsibility to remove that toxicity from her organization. By noon that same day, everyone in the company knew that Mr. Adeyemi had been fired. The news spread like wildfire through the offices. People whispered about it in the hallways, discussed it in private messages, and debated it during lunch breaks. Some people were shocked. Others were relieved. And many of the women in the company, particularly those who had been mistreated by Mr. Adeyemi, felt a sense of validation. Finally, someone in power had listened to them. Finally, there were consequences. But the reckoning was not finished. 2 days later, Kunal received a different kind of notice. He was called into a mandatory meeting with the head of human resources and a senior executive from the corporate office. The meeting was brief and to the point. Kunal was given a choice, and it was not a pleasant one. He could either enroll immediately in an intensive leadership and diversity training program, undergo counseling to address his behavioral issues, and issue a formal public apology to his wife, or he could resign from the company immediately and accept the consequences of that decision. If he chose to resign, his severance package would be minimal, and there would be a note in his employment record indicating that he had left under questionable circumstances. If he chose to participate in the training program and show genuine commitment to change, he would retain his position, but he would be placed on probation for 1 year. His performance would be monitored closely, and any further incidents of inappropriate behavior would result in immediate termination. Kunal left that meeting in shock. He had never imagined that anything he had said at the gala would have real consequences. He had never considered that his words about his wife could follow him into his professional life and actually threaten his job. As a man who had always seemed to escape the consequences of his actions, this was something entirely new and terrifying. He chose to enroll in the training program. He had no choice really. He needed his job. He needed his income. The thought of being fired and having to start his career over was too frightening to contemplate. But his decision came too late to protect his reputation. The news of his situation spread through Lagos society like wildfire. By the end of that week, everyone knew what had happened. Everyone knew that Kunal had mocked his wife at a company gala. Everyone knew that he had been forced to attend diversity training as a result. And suddenly, instead of Chioma being the subject of mockery, it was Kunal who became the target of jokes and criticism. At the country club where they used to spend weekends together, people whispered about Kunal behind his back. At family gatherings, relatives asked pointed questions about whether he was attending a fixing school for bad husbands. His own mother called him to ask if the rumors were true, and when he tried to explain, she was disappointed and angry. His friends who had laughed along with him at the gala, now distanced themselves from him, not wanting to be associated with someone who had been publicly shamed. Meanwhile, the same society that had mocked Chioma at the gala now began to show her respect and support. Her friends called to check on her. Professional colleagues reached out with job offers and business opportunities. Women who had been strangers a week before now looked at her with admiration. seeing her as someone who had been wronged and was standing up for herself. 3 weeks after Mr. Adeyemi was fired, Chioma made her decision. She moved out of the house that she and Kunal had shared. She found a beautiful apartment in the Ikoyi area of Lagos, a place that was entirely her own. She hired a good lawyer and filed for legal separation. The papers were served to Kunal on a Friday afternoon, and the reality of what was happening finally seemed to hit him. Kunal began trying desperately to win Chioma back. He sent flowers to her new apartment. He wrote long emails explaining how sorry he was, how he had been a fool, how he wanted to make things right. He called her repeatedly, sometimes angry, sometimes begging, sometimes trying to negotiate. He told her that they could work things out, that they could go to couples therapy, that they could rebuild their marriage. But Chioma was done. She had spent 5 years supporting a man who did not respect her, who had used her sacrifices against her, who had publicly humiliated her for the sake of impressing his boss. She had given him enough chances to show her that he valued her and respected her. He had failed every single time. She did not answer his calls. She did not respond to his emails. She blocked him on WhatsApp after he sent her message after message trying to explain himself. She was polite but firm when he tried to speak to her in person, telling him that their marriage was over and that they should work through their lawyers. The most difficult moment came when Kunal showed up at her office unannounced, carrying an expensive bouquet of roses and looking desperate. He begged her to give him another chance. He promised that he had learned his lesson, that the diversity training had changed him, that he was a different man now. But Chioma looked at him and she realized that she felt nothing. The love that she had once felt for him had died, killed by years of disrespect and culminating in that night at the gala when he had laughed loudly while breaking her heart. "Kunal," she said quietly but firmly, "go home. Do the training. Learn to be a better person. But do it for yourself, not for me. I have moved on and so should you." She turned around and walked back into her office, closing the door behind her. She did not look back. She did not cry. She simply moved forward with her life, stronger than she had ever been before and finally free. 6 months had passed since Chioma filed for separation from Kunal. 6 months of healing, of growth, of rebuilding herself piece by piece. 6 months of working with Busola to transform the company's culture from something toxic and broken into something that valued respect, dignity, and equality. And now, on this evening in Lagos, Chioma was about to return to the place where her humiliation had begun. The Lekki luxury hotel ballroom looked exactly the same as it had 6 months ago. The golden chandeliers hung from the ceiling, casting their warm light across the marble floors. The same expensive decorations adorned the walls. The same kind of wealthy, powerful people mingled in small groups, dressed in designer clothes and expensive jewelry. But for Chioma, everything about this place had changed because everything about her had changed. She stood in front of the mirror in the hotel's private dressing room, taking a moment to look at herself. She wore a deep purple dress tonight, a color she had chosen because it made her feel powerful and confident. The dress was elegant and expensive, but more than that, it was chosen by Chioma for Chioma. It was not chosen to impress anyone else or to fit into anyone else's idea of who she should be. The dress was a statement. It said, "I am here, I am important, and I know my worth." Her hair was styled beautifully, her makeup was done perfectly, and when she looked in the mirror, she saw a woman who had been tested by shame and had emerged victorious. She saw a woman who had reclaimed her power. She saw a woman who was no longer apologizing for who she was or where she came from. She took a deep breath, stood up straight and walked out of the dressing room and into the ballroom. As soon as she entered, Busola appeared at her side, linking her arm through Chioma's with a warm smile. Busola looked stunning in a black evening gown, and as always, she carried herself with the confidence of someone who belonged in any room. Together, the two cousins made their entrance into the ballroom. Chioma could feel eyes turning toward them, but these were not the eyes of mockery and pity that had haunted her 6 months ago. These were eyes of respect and admiration. A colleague from the company approached them immediately, extending his hand to Chioma with genuine warmth. "Chioma, it is so good to see you," he said. "I wanted to thank you personally for the new mentorship program you launched. It has been life-changing for our junior staff members." Another woman, someone Chioma did not recognize, approached her next. "I heard about the diversity initiative you are leading," the woman said. "I just wanted to say thank you. Because of the work you are doing, my daughter feels like she can have a real career in corporate Nigeria. She feels like she belongs." Throughout the evening, person after person came to talk to Chioma. They congratulated her on her new position as head of corporate culture and inclusion. They praised the new policies she had implemented. They thanked her for creating a workplace where people felt valued and respected. She spoke with clients, with employees, with business leaders, and with each conversation she felt more and more confident, more and more powerful. At one point during the evening, Chioma was speaking with a group of female executives about the challenges women faced in the corporate world. She was sharing ideas about how companies could create more supportive environments for women, about how businesses could benefit from having diverse leadership teams. She was speaking with authority and expertise, drawing on her own experiences and her professional knowledge. The women around her listened intently, asking her questions, respecting her opinions. That was when she saw him. Kunal stood across the room talking to a small group of men. He looked different from 6 months ago. He looked tired and diminished somehow. His suit was still expensive, but he no longer seemed to wear it with the confidence he once had. As if he could sense her looking at him, Kunal glanced in her direction. Their eyes met for just a moment, and in that moment Chioma saw the shame in his face. She saw that he understood what he had lost. She saw that he had finally begun to grasp the consequences of his cruelty. Kunal quickly looked away and turned back to his conversation. His shoulders seemed to slump slightly, as if he was trying to make himself smaller, trying to disappear. Chioma felt no triumph in his shame. She felt no satisfaction in his humiliation. Instead, she felt a kind of sad resignation. This man had been part of her life for 5 years, and while he had hurt her deeply, she had moved beyond needing him to suffer in order to feel better about herself. She simply turned back to the women around her and continued speaking, giving Kunal no more of her attention or her energy. As the evening progressed, Basola pulled Chioma aside to a quiet corner of the ballroom. Her cousin's expression was serious but excited, and Chioma could tell that Basola had something important to say. "Chioma," Basola began, "I have been watching you work over these past 6 months. I have seen the impact you have made on our company. I have heard the stories from employees about how their lives have changed because of the programs you created. I have seen the way people respect you, the way they listen to you, the way they follow your leadership." "Thank you, Basola," Chioma said. "I have loved every moment of this work. Which is why I want to offer you something bigger," Basola continued. "I want to expand the corporate culture and inclusion initiative across the entire African continent. I want to take what we have built here in Lagos and extend it to all of our offices in Kenya, South Africa, Ghana, and beyond. I want you to lead this continental expansion. I want you to be the Vice President of Continental Diversity and Inclusion for the entire organization." Chioma's breath caught in her throat. This was more than she had ever dreamed possible. A few months ago, she had been a woman sitting alone in a bathroom stall at a gala, her heart broken by the man she loved. Now she was being offered a position that would allow her to impact the lives of thousands of people across an entire continent. "Basola, Chioma started, but her cousin held up her hand. "Before you answer, let me tell you what this means," Basola said. "It means a substantial increase in salary. It means leading a team of people dedicated to this mission. It means traveling across Africa, speaking at conferences, meeting with leaders, and helping to transform corporate culture at a continental level. It means power, Chioma. It means influence. It means that your voice will be heard not just in Nigeria, but across Africa." Chioma felt tears filling her eyes, but these were tears of joy and gratitude. She thought about her journey, about the pain that had led her here, about the strength she had discovered within herself. She thought about her mother, who had sold vegetables in the market so that she could have opportunities. She thought about all the women who were still suffering silently in toxic work environments, still being mocked and diminished by men who did not respect them. "Yes," Chioma said simply. "Yes, I accept. Not for the money or the power, but because I want to make a difference. I want to help other women and men too, to work in places where they are valued and respected for who they are." Basola embraced her cousin, holding her tightly. "I knew you would say that," Basola said. "I knew that you were the right person for this. You have a good heart, Chioma. You have strength. And you have earned this." Later that night, as Chioma stood in the ballroom looking around at the people who had once mocked her and the people who now respected her, she felt a profound sense of peace. She had not come here seeking revenge or wanting to hurt Kunal or Mr. Adeyemi. She had simply stood up for herself, told the truth, and allowed that truth to create change. She was no longer the woman who was ashamed of her background. She was no longer the woman who apologized for taking up space. She was no longer the woman who sacrificed her own dreams for someone who did not value her. She was Chioma. She was powerful. She was worthy. And she was just getting started. As she looked at her reflection in one of the ballroom's mirrors, She smiled at the woman looking back at her. That woman was strong. That woman was beautiful. That woman had reclaimed her life, and nothing and no one would ever take it from her again.